How much money do I make as an IBW journeyman lineman working in the state of Arizona? Now, this number might kind of shock you in a good way or a bad way, or maybe you have different preconceived notions of like how much a journeyman lineman makes, because there's a lot of numbers thrown all over the internet. And I want to make this video because now, as important as money is, when you're getting into a skilled trade, you're thinking about, man, I want to make the most money. If I'm gonna be working the hardest, if I'm gonna be doing this back-breaking work, I wanna get compensated for my work ethic. And that's awesome. And that's a high possibility of you doing that inside of a skilled trade. I wanna make this video showing the realistic numbers you could expect to make as a journeyman lineman if you're working in the state of Arizona. This is a week paycheck on a 50-hour work week, 40 hours of straight time, 10 hours of overtime, which is time and a half per the IBW 769 contract. This is another thing I will note on the side is these numbers I'm going to talk about here are not at all reflection of numbers you can expect to see anywhere else in the United States. These are kind of common numbers you could maybe expect to see because the hourly wage we make here in Arizona is pretty average as far as most other states except for the South, but most Midwest states or East Coast or West Coast, they all kind of average between $55 to $65 an hour. The regular hourly rate right now for a journeyman lineman out of IBW 769 is $57.39. Now that's per contract. I think they get a pay increase or an hourly pay rate bump in August per the contract, but that's the hourly rate here. That's on straight time. Per contract, time and a half is time and a half of what $57.39 is, which is $86.10 about is what time and a half is. Now let's break down what I make in a 50-hour work week here working in Phoenix, Arizona. Here I have my paper pay stub. On regular pay on 40 hours at $57.39, I made $2,295.60. With the overtime of 10 hours at a rate of $86.85, I made $860.85. If you add the $2,295.60 plus $860.85, that comes out to being a gross payment of $3,156.45. Now that's the gross, how much I would make before taxes on a 50-hour work week here locally where I'm at. Let's start taking away what Uncle Sam wants. Federal withholding tax of $560.16. FICA employee paid is $195.70. Medicare employee paid $45.77. Arizona withholding tax $47.35, and dues percentage GP is $94.69. That is what I make on a weekly basis if we work 50 hours a week, which is very common for us to work 50 hours a week, 40 straight, 10 overtime, Monday through Friday. I'm roughly taking home $2,212.78 a week. You might think of that number like, wow, that's way lower than I thought it would be, or it might be like, whoa, that's pretty good, or that's higher than I thought it might be. Arizona is a right to work state, so luckily the IBW is a pretty strong union here, so our hourly rate is pretty competitive, average amongst most other IBW locals in the country, except for the East Coast, the West Coast. Those are definitely higher rates. I think Washington, Oregon rates like $64 an hour. California is like $67 or $68 an hour. That's the hourly rate. So then you have to add in the factor of annuity, healthcare, what the whole kind of package is included inside of contract for what local union you're working out of. I'm not trying to get so much into the total package numbers. I just want to explain what a weekly paycheck looks like for me on Monday through Friday, 50-hour paycheck. That's a number you could expect to see. Now, like I said, it all depends on the contract you're in. For me, I took a call out of the union hall for what was 410s, 40-hour work week, 4 days, 10-hour days. That's all straight time. Our overtime days are on Friday. I come in, we work a Friday, that's all overtime. So from hours 1 to 10, that's time and a half. That all depends on the call that you take. There's also calls you could take that are for 510s, which would mean 8 hours of straight time each day and then 2 hours of time and a half. Monday, you're starting at 5:30 to 1:30 is 8 hours is going to be straight time, and then 1:30 to 3:30 is going to be time and a half. You're working 5 days a week. You're going to make the same amount I made right here. Gross amount of $3,156.45 to work under a different condition than maybe some of the other people. Now, you might take a call for that's like 512s or 610s or 510s and per diem. And there's all these different calls that could be put out for a lineman that you could take that could differ your paycheck. The reason why you get paid more during the week, or maybe you get paid a little less, but there's different circumstances and why you might get paid more or less. That is a paycheck that you could expect to see, especially here in Arizona, if you're working a 50-hour work week. Now, there's a lot of people here right now not working 50 hours. They're working a lot more, 60, 70. They're working 712s or 612s with per diem. So they're making a lot more than that. And if you want to do the math, you could, you know that the hourly rate is $57.39. And then you could do time and a half. You could figure out what the contract is, and you can figure out, okay, they make this much in a week if they're working 612s with per diem. You just do the math pretty easily, and you'll figure out, oh, they make gross, I'm just throwing out a number, $4,600. We could do the math of how much would you gross or make in a year if you were working a 50-hour work week for 52 weeks. Let's just say you just stuck working 50 hours a week for 52 weeks throughout the year, just working every single week. So if we do the math, I grossed $3,156.45. Now we multiply that by 52 weeks in a year, and that's $164,135.40. So you could expect to make roughly 100, well, it depends. If you're going to take a few weeks off or a month off here and there, you could expect to make anywhere between $140,000 to $160,000 a year if you just work a 50-hour work week your whole entire year. That's what you could expect to gross as a journeyman lineman working here on 50 hours a week. Now, like I was saying previously in the video, that's honestly not really realistic, because depending on where you're working, if you're in California, those guys aren't working 50 hours a week. Those guys are working 60, 70, 80 hours a week, doing big jobs, making a lot of money. If maybe you're working in an area where there's a lot of storms or you get a lot of call outs, it's hard to base a number of where you're at on this is how much you're going to make a week, a month, or even a year, because that number varies so much depending on if you do storm work, or if you're getting per diem, or if you're working 7 days a week with, depending on the contract, if it's all time and a half or if it's double time. So like for us, for the most part, holidays and Sundays are double time and Saturdays are time and a half, except when you get over 10 hours, maybe it's double time. So many different varying factors where you could make a lot more money. Just depends on what the employer wants to pay and what your local union contract conditions say for the property you're working on. So hopefully you can learn from this video what I make as a journeyman lineman in Phoenix, Arizona on a 50-hour work week. And if you do the math, what I would make a month and 6 months or in a year if I were to work a 50-hour work week every week for 52 weeks. Like I said, those aren't necessarily realistic numbers, but they are ballpark average numbers you could expect to see as a journeyman lineman. This as a journeyman lineman, as an apprentice, you're going to make a little bit less just because the hourly wage is a little bit less. But if you're working a lot and you're getting per diem and you're getting a lot of hours, you might make, there's possibility that you'll make a lot more. You could make a lot more, but it all just depends on, the conditions and what contract, what job you're on. There's a lot of different factors involved depending on how much you're going to make on a paycheck each week. But that is an average. That is a good ballpark that I have seen in my lifetime, in my career so far as a journeyman lineman. If I want to, I guess I can go travel. I can go find big jobs. I can make connections and try to make more money if I want to. But right now I'm doing all right. Hopefully you can learn from those numbers. Maybe they caught you by surprise. Maybe you're like, whoa, I thought they made a lot more. And yes, you can make a lot more, but don't believe everything you see on the internet. I know plumbers, electricians, HVAC techs, welders. I know a lot of guys in different trades that make a lot more than I do. And that's the thing. What is the trade that you want to get into? What is the niche that you want to become a skilled craftsman in? And if you want to try to figure that one out, you can go to a website, bluecollaredu.com, take the trade skills test, and that'll spit you out an answer that is going to give you maybe a trade that you should pursue a career in. That being said, Blue Collar EDU. I'm here to expose, teach, educate you about blue collar career opportunities and things that'll help you getting started in a skilled trade. With that being said, I'll catch you on the next one.